Okay, welcome back to this session of the Redwood Coast Transit Authority. It's about 5:45, so we're going to get the meeting started. So I'll call this meeting to order, and Joe, if you would do a roll call.
Chairman Short,
Here.
Vice Chair Smith, Director Altman,
Here. Director Matz.
Director Maston.
And
Here.
just for the record, Director Smith called and said he would be running a bit late, so we should see him momentarily.
And Director Roberts is not here either, yes.
If you would all stand with me and participate in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Okay, next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment for this meeting. Any general public comment? Any comments for items that are on or off the agenda today? Have any online? None online. Okay, we'll move to our third item as the election of officers. As Joe said earlier, traditionally it alternates from county to city and back and forth. Obviously, for this term, we have me as the chairman from the county. Here we have Director Smith just now walking in. We're doing election of officers, so perfect timing there. Appreciate you being here. So with the election of officers, I'd like to open it up for nominations for the chairman of Redwood Coast Transit Authority. Do I have any nominations?
Nominate Ray Altman.
Got a nomination for Ray Altman. Is there a second?
Can I second my own nomination?
No, that's kind of out of order, sir.
I'll second.
You have a second for a nomination of Ray Altman as chair. Any other nominations? So I'll close nominations for chair. And Joe, would you poll the vote?
Okay, the vote for chair for Ray Altman, current chairman Short,
Yes.
vice chair Smith,
Yes.
director Maston,
Yes.
director Altman.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, yes.
It does feel weird to vote for yourself, but yes, you do vote for yourself.
We were gonna pick a city person for chair for this year, right?
That's right.
Okay.
So I'm vacating the chair, Mr. Altman.
And the next step is we need to select a vice chair, and thank you, Darren.
Thank you, Darren,
Yep.
for serving as the chair.
Yes, Darren, thank you.
You did a great job for us. Now we need to find a vice chair, and this would be the county's turn to be vice chair.
Okay, so we're opening up for nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Darren.
Well, I'll second that nomination. I was gonna nominate her, but
I was too, but I guess.
But I don't know if I'm.
you
chair.
don't know?
Well, I'm in an election, so
Okay. All right, I'll understand. I'll second Director Short.
Okay, so we pull the vote then, right?
Unless there's any more nominations, which.
Oh, are there any more nominations? All right, let's pull the vote.
Oh, that's me. Chair Altman,
Yes.
I almost said vice chair, director Short,
Yes.
director Maston,
yes.
and director Smith.
Yes.
So Chairman,
No.
I'd just like to add the explanation to that. So I'm an appointed supervisor by the governor. And so I'm actually in an election, but I'm only serving until the new supervisor is elected. And that could very well be me. But that would seem like a disservice to interrupt in case it's not me, the vice chair. You'd have to elect a new vice chair. And it just seems good for consistency.
Very
Well,
gracious
I
of you.
understand. Thank you.
Okay, so on to the consent calendar. We have 4A, 4B, and 4C, adopt resolution 2021-2207, approving RCTA 2022 consolidated funding application to Caltrans and authorizing the general manager to execute all grant documents. 4B is approve the minutes of the April 25th, 2022 RCTA Board Annual Workshop and Meeting. And 4C, approve submittal of RCTA 2022 Federal Transit Administration certifications and assurances.
Move to approve consent.
I'll second.
Okay. Any public comment on the consent calendar?
there anybody online, Mackenzie, that has public comment?
No public comment. Okay, with that, then we'll pull the vote for the consent calendar.
Chair Altman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Maston,
Yes,
and Director Roberts is absent.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I should have taken care of this when we opened the meeting, but we are pulling item number 10 from the agenda as it's tonight. The item is not ready for today's meeting.
Okay, item 10 is pulled.
Yes.
Moving on to item 5, discussion and approval of 2022 short range transit plan mini update.
Great. Good afternoon, Board of Directors. Thank you all for being here and friends on Zoom and in attendance. This item was presented last month at our annual strategic planning workshop. It's a bit pretty unusual that we do a short range transit plan update between our 5-year cycles of regular planning, but this has been a pretty unusual era of our lives. So because of the changes and the impacts of the pandemic on the agency and our funding sources, we thought it was really a good idea to spend some time this year because we have 2 more years before we can really start doing our next plan. So we wanted to look at some of the things that have changed. So particularly from the 2-year-old plan that's already, pretty obsolete. It's almost 3 years old now. We wanted to look at the existing services, the service plan, and our CTSA, which is 2 years old. A couple of new projects there. But the main thrust was kind of the financial plan because so much had changed financially in our situation, and we wanted to make sure that we were on solid footing there. So the SRTP is an attachment in your packet. It's just a mini update. It's like 30 pages. But Ronnie Kraft put this together for us. So it's the same consulting team that did the actual plan 3 years ago. And the highlights are that really good news for Redwood Coast Transit is that the rise in our main funding source, which is our TDA LTF funds, which is Transportation Development Act, local transportation funds, seems to be sustainable and legitimate. And we had Ronnie spend a lot of her time on this mini. A lot of her hours that she had was interviewing folks statewide to see if this was just an anomaly for Del Norte County and our CTA, or if this was happening just with the rural areas, or what's going on and what could be the driving factors. And while no one was 100% sure, they felt that there was a Wayfair Act, like in 2019, that further improved California's mechanisms for capturing e-commerce sales tax. And that has caused, because sale of durable goods is what powers the TDA fund, that was felt to be the key driver in these numbers because they are up statewide, although more so in the rural areas. So areas like us have seen double-digit increases each year, which has been, fantastic. Urban areas a little less so, and that even makes more sense because you think of it, the e-commerce is a bigger part of shopping out here, where it's a long distance from some of the specialty stores and stuff. So that was, it looks like it's sustainable funds that we can rely upon. Of course, it is subject to economic activity. So if there were a great recession or something, that's always a possibility that affects sales tax. But in general, the good news is that the consultant fund, we can probably count on these funds at the new levels going forward. So that was a huge thing. All the other funding we get was updated. Our capital plan was updated. We came out of this pandemic with a much higher operating cost per hour. So that needs to then be balanced against how much funding we have to carry to sustain the agency. And we've talked about this, many times here. We feel we're at that spot. It doesn't mean we can just reinstate all kinds of services, super aggressively, because demand is still way down. But the good news is we're in a position, and the recommendation is we can start bringing back some service. And later on our agenda, we have a summer service plan that we want to present to you that'll bring back most of our service that we used to have before the pandemic during summer, which is our best season and our best chance to regain ridership. So I think that's it. The document's pretty thorough, so if there's any questions, comments or anything, that's all I have really for a presentation on it right now.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the short-range transit plan mini update.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. So, Joe, will you pull the vote for us, please?
Okay.
We need public comment.
Oh,
On-
I'm
on
sorry, I'm
every item.
sorry.
I
Public
used to do it
comment?
all the time too, so I'm very, very,
So
well
no questions from
educated
the
on
board,
getting
then we're
reminded
going
for-
to go to public comment. Is there any public comment? None? No public comment, so we will go to the vote. Thank you.
That'll be Chair Altman,
Yes?
Vice Chair Smith, or, oops, Vice Chair Short,
yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
and Director Maston,
Yes.
and Director Roberts is absent.
All right, I'll get the hang of this.
Yeah.
We
All
know you
right,
will.
moving on to item number 6. Discussion and approval of June 2022 summer service schedule.
Okay, thank you. This item is, as previewed a moment ago, in recent years, our service has been anything but static. I kind of come from the planning school that each year you should at least optimize and do some minor changes based on what's working and what's not. So we've done that, and there's a little history in the first page of your staff report. We've done some minor stuff, and then we've done some major stuff. We've been through quite a bit together the last 6 years. We've had funding losses that caused some cuts, like in 2017. Then we've had funding come back. We've reinstated service. Then we had the pandemic come, just as we were kind of getting on a roll with our Route 300 tripper service, and the pandemic hit and put the halt to that. Mostly, we didn't do much since April 2020. So we did an extensive proactive cut when the pandemic was just hitting. And then we basically rode with that until last fall. In the fall of 21, we wanted to start easing back in some services. So we approved that, and we got started on that. The 300 started last August, August 2021, with the start of the school year. We reinstated Saturday service a little later than that. It ended up starting in October 2021. That was due to some driver issues, and we haven't talked about that a lot, but it was addressed a bit in the mini short range plan update. One of the biggest challenges that's come out of the pandemic is the labor shortage that's affected bus drivers nationwide, probably all over North America. So we reinstated the Saturday service in October, and that stuck, which was good. But then we unfortunately did have to do an unplanned emergency service reduction around just before the holidays that has been in place until actually just in the last month or two. We brought back most of the emergency reductions, including today, the 7 o'clock hour of service started back up today. Because luckily we did get a class full of drivers trained. And so Fernando's done a good job getting staff back up so that we could bring that service back, because we've had the funds to do it for a year. It's just been the human resources to do it, the drivers. So what we're proposing for this summer is to go to a summer schedule for a couple of reasons, but one of which is it's pretty obvious from about 6 years now coming to town and being part of the Redwood Coast Transit family, that the summer is the high season, the peak season here for activity and recreation. So that seems to make the most sense if we're going to try to be aggressive and bring back service, especially the regional services, to try it in the summer when the recreational travel's at its peak. In addition, in the summer, the 300 goes away because it's a school-oriented service, so that frees up some hours. And so what we're recommending for you today is the package we presented last month with only one little change. So at the bottom of page 1, it shows the 4 reinstated services we're recommending for our summer schedule. The first one we checked off today, so you can see it's in italics. Today we got the 7 o'clock hour back, which is huge. I was very displeased to have to do that. Number 2 is reinstate the evening Route 20 trip that goes south between Crescent City to Klamath. That was part of the original package of cuts in April 2020. And it hurts because it means that if you live in Klamath to take the RCTA bus home, you got to leave at 3 o'clock or that's it. So this offers now an evening trip for folks that have to stay around longer, that are in town longer. So this is a cut that we didn't really want to do, and we're glad to reinstate it if we can. And that would be 7 days a week. So it's a Monday through Saturday, or not 7, I mean 6, Monday through Saturday. The third one is the late afternoon trip of Route 199 between Crescent City and Gasky. That was one of the proactive cuts of April 2020 at the height of the pandemic. But it left only 2 trips a day going out to Gasky and back. Morning around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then around noon. But then after that, no way to go out there in the afternoon. So this will have a third round trip, which is pretty important on this route. This is our worst route from a productivity standpoint, but it's also the route that does the best in the summer comparatively to winter because of the recreation out by the river. So we think it's really important to put our best foot forward on this route in the summertime when it traditionally does fairly decent. Winter's tough on this route. And then the last one was the one that we weren't sure about when we met with you a month ago, just because of driver availability. We wanted to make sure we could really do this, but fortunately, it looks like we can. So we're recommending the second midday round trip between Crescent City and Arcata, including Klamath and Klamath Glen, get reinstated. That got cut in April 2020 also. And this will bring us back up to 3 trips a day going south, that was the peak. That's the pre-pandemic level of service we had. And it allows people to do half-day trips down to Humboldt. Right now, they either have the morning route or the late afternoon. So they're basically down there for the day right now. So this adds trip flexibility. And there's a lot of recreational trails and biking areas along the way that we stop at, like Prairie Creek and the visitor center at the beach at Kuchel. So we think this will be really good for our summer recreational travelers. And then if you look at the cost of these on page 2, I did find out, we were going through the fuel cost estimation, and I found out that I misread them by about $6 an hour with the current pricing that we're paying. So all the costs are a little bit understated. It should be about $18 an hour for fuel costs is what we're running right now.
Well, I was gonna bring that up. Those are all diesel burners, correct?
No, it's a mix. Yeah, we got some diesels that are 7 and then right now, and then the rest are gasoline, but we're paying 6 for that. So, yeah. So I underestimated the amount of fuel.
Okay.
Yeah. So the cost, it would be like $6 times whatever the hours is. So each one would be maybe 1,000 or 2 more. So it's not grossly underestimated, but it's a little bit. So the staff's recommending we approve the summer service changes. We got a draft brochure put together that we need to finalize and get to the printer. The effective date for everything besides that first one that we already checked off today. The other 3 elements would be brought back on a June 6th new schedule would be in town by then and distributed. So the effective date would be Monday the 6th.
Any questions from the board?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion that we approve the summer service changes for 2022.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. We're gonna ask for public comment at this time. I guess my mic wasn't on. Any public comment regarding the?
Well, I have a question.
Oh,
Should we make the motion with those costs changed?
Yes. That's what I understood.
Yes, the fuel costs are changed, but what we're making a motion on, from my understanding, is the schedule changes. for the
Okay,
buses.
all right.
So it's not a money.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
Item. Yeah.
But I do think that it should be reflective of the fuel costs, because this is what people see. And then, the costs aren't actually that. So we updated what those costs are. So I think it is appropriate, just that transparency kind of thing with people who are looking at it, that there should be some reflection that we acknowledge that that wasn't.
I think we did that in the meeting,
Okay,
acknowledging that the numbers are
We
not
did.
completely accurate.
Yeah, I've got a new total of 63, 348, so it was about 7,000 an understatement of the fuel. Hopefully it doesn't go up much more. I mean, that's a dynamic target, but yeah, we are really.
Yes, it is
approving it.
definitely an informational item that is related to the schedule changes for
Yeah.
sure. I understand. But what I believe what the agenda item is just approving the schedule change.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment? With no public comment, can we call a vote, please?
Chair Altman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
and Director Maston,
yes.
and Director Roberts is absent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 7. Adopt resolution 2021-2208 approving amendment 1 to the RCTA fiscal year 2021-22 budget.
Okay, thank you for the intro. This item is a procedural item to move money around between the approved budget that was adopted at the start of the fiscal year, a year ago, June. The Donort County Auditor's Office has a policy not to allow any line items to go over, even if the overall unit budget stays under, which is just a different approach. But what it does is it causes, unless we're perfect each year, it kind of causes these cleanup amendments at the end of the year. So this particular one this year, we did a pretty good job of guessing wildly at the future. Where we tripped up on was we had our planning project. So you may recall last meeting, we had a presentation on the Cultural Center Hub from Jeff Schwein at Green Dot. And then we had the presentation on our mini SRTP update. Those two planning projects, only one, I think, was in the original budget. So that line item for planning and marketing needed augmentation. And then there was one other one here. Here it is. Then the services line item, because we started our technology projects this fiscal year that were generally all a part of the Far North operators, the credit card project or the contactless fares. A lot of the technology upgrades are related to that. So we brought on Swiftly as our new AVL CAD system, which tells it's a system that tracks where all the buses are at every few seconds, transmits that data to us, what speed they're going, what route they're on in real time. So that's the engine that was necessary to have the so now when you go on your phone on like Google Transit, on Google Maps, if you push the transit option, you'll get not just what the print schedule is, but what the bus is really actually doing. Maybe it's a little late, so it'll tell you 5 minutes instead of 2 minutes so that you know the status of the bus. So that's a big thing, but that wasn't fully included in the budget a year ago that we would get this far on it. So that item, which is 20231, needs augmentation. So 18 and 17,500 respectively are going to those two line items, and 32,000 was put in the CTSA line item, even though it has its own budget. I'm not sure how that happened, but we'll take from that. It's unneeded in Fund 645, and then 4,000 from a different kind of duplicative services line item that we haven't been spending on at all. So that's an even wash there at 36,000 moving around. And then there was two capital projects, one of which advanced faster than the other. So we're moving 23,000 or 22,000, excuse me, out of the transit facility mobile kiosk project because we didn't get around to buying a kiosk. We did do the planning and it was very exciting. We had a presentation on that last month, but we didn't buy anything on the kiosk. So we moved some money that was unneeded there for this year into bus stops because we have an item on here in a couple minutes to spend a little more than the 38,000 that we originally budgeted for our year's bus stop improvements. So that's the budget amendment one that's before you today.
Thank you.
Motion.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2021-22-08. Approving amendment number 1 to RCTA fiscal year 2021-22 budget to modify revenues and expenditures for various line items. Is that it?
That's it. And we had a second?
Sure, I'll second it.
Oh, did I cut you off? I apologize if I
She actually
did.
made the motion.
I made the
Okay.
motion, but I didn't know that we had to restate. the
Oh.
motion. So, but, so you're appropriate.
Well, I didn't mean to. I apologize if I cut you off.
You're good.
Okay, apologies for the confusion. We have a motion in a second. Any public comment on number 7? No public comment. Let's pull the vote, please.
Chair Altman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Maston,
Yes.
and Director Roberts is absent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 8, adopt resolution 2021-2209, adopting RCTA fiscal year 2022-23 budget.
All right, this is an exciting one. This is our annual budget for 22-23. We've been through a lot. Luckily, we just did a deep dive into it on the short range transit plan. So we feel pretty confident about the numbers that are in play. So let's look at some of the expenditures that we're planning for this year. Being as we probably feel more confident than usual about the revenue projections, just because we just did an extensive research on it. We have restoration of much of the service that was cut in April 2020, especially in the new summer schedules. I wanted to stop and talk about this for a little bit because it's something we're gonna, when we get back together again in a couple of months, we're gonna need to make some decisions on is how much of the summer service schedule do we want to pull back for the fall, winter, spring, for the off season. So that'll be something to consider. There's ramifications to staffing, obviously if part of it, we'll know more how we're doing on drivers, in 8 weeks than we do now. But one thing we don't want to do is have such a drop in hours, maybe in the fall, that we might scare away any operators that we have, if they don't feel they're getting enough hours and, and they're feeling a financial hit that way. But at the same time, we really do have an interest in maybe having our best foot forward in the summer and a little bit of a reduction in the winter. So that'll be on our plate in 2 months when we get together in July. The summer schedule will be good through the end of August, maybe through Labor Day weekend. Although the 300 will come back when school comes back, which I want to say is like August 25th or so. So it'll come back before Labor Day, but that goes without saying. So anyway, I wanted to just kind of stop and touch on that because we kind of went through it. I failed to touch on it during the summer schedule vote. We're projecting fares to rebound slightly. Hopefully we're conservative there. Maybe they'll rebound faster than we think. That would be great. They're way down from before the pandemic, and that's been true now for 2 years running. Inside the budget, there's our usual, I don't even know what to call it, but for the buses, because we try to always leverage federal funds as much as possible for the lion's share of the purchase of the buses. So we usually put in as many as we know we have federal grants for. And this year that is up to 5, although 2 of those could be rehab. There's still a little bit of a drama going on back and forth on that. But there could be more. So we have other grants in. We just approved the consolidated grant on our consent agenda. That asks for a couple more buses, and we'll know later in the year whether we're successful with that application or not. So if we are, we'll need to amend the budget for those additional buses if we can get them ordered, and I hope we can, because the one other item that's unique to this year's budget coming up, our PTMISEA money that we've been misering and rationing for 10 years now to use as local match for our buses, and a little bit for facility rehab stuff. That funding is finally being sunsetted by Caltrans. We can't miser it any longer, which worked out good because we were just about done spending it down anyway, but we have to encumber it by next June. So if we don't get federal grants, what that means is we might have to just buy one vehicle with pure PTMISEA money, that's okay. If we have to do that, we have to do that. Anyway, so that's unique. So this is the last fiscal year that we'll have these funds in the budget. I will say we have to encumber. So with buses, it's taken about a year to have them built nowadays due to supply issues and just the way the industry works. So we may encumber them and order them before the end of next June, but they may not actually get paid until the following year. Other highlights, we have, so let's talk about our exciting capital projects beyond just not that bus replacement isn't exciting. I think it's great. But the LC top funds, we've now accumulated 166,000 in these funds. These are state funds that came out of the cap and trade legislation about 5 years ago. We've used them for different things in the past. We used them to fund our free bus program that pays for the students and the veterans and the college students to ride free. That particular project is almost out of money, so probably enough to get through this coming year, but that's about it. Because Caltrans has to approve these projects. So the last 3 years, Caltrans wouldn't do any more. They wouldn't approve any more for the free bus. So they steered us towards our electric bus project to comply with CARB, all the state, all the transit agencies in the state, starting in 2026 and beyond 2029, they may have to be completely zero emission vehicles. But this project is for the electric bus portion of our zero emission bus strategy. So the 166 cannot be used for engineering. Don't ask me why. So we'll have to fund that part. The engineering that we need for our yard improvements has to come out of our reserves. But these funds can be used for purchasing the equipment and actual construction of the yard improvements, which is great. We're almost sure to need some electrical service upgrades for the yard, for the charging of up to 6-8 vehicles. First, we need to determine how many are max charging, what the maximum amount of EVs would be in the fleet in the future. I think it's probably around 10, but we'll see. So we need to do, and then we need the electrical engineers kind of need to do the calculation of what kind of power it would take to charge 10 vehicles in the yard. And then we'll design to that maximum charging scenario. So the 166 is in the budget. The idea being we'd do the engineering and hopefully start construction this time next year. And maybe the construction's paid a little bit in fiscal year 22, 23, and then a little bit in 23, 24. Because I don't think the 166 is going to be enough to cover it. Let's hope so, but I have my suspicions. Different project, but equally exciting. We included 175,000 to design and construct some infrastructure improvements, hopefully at the preferred new site down at Front Street between H&I that we received our presentation from Jeff last month. This would include, right now, I know they're working on like a 10% design to basically to show the city and keep the conversation going. But assuming that goes well, the next step will be to evaluate the pavement condition and issues with the 4 driveways at the site, because there's quite a bump there. 3 of the 4 have major, probably need driveway redone. So they'll need to analyze that, ADA considerations and do the design, and then includes 100,000 hopefully for construction in that batch. So, and then a little bit for the mobile kiosk option that's still in play. Maybe we do it, maybe we don't. As an agency, we're going to kind of need to think about how we want to proceed there. If we want to do a mobile kiosk as a first step, because it might be the cheapest way to start operating out of there until we can build a permanent kind of structure down there. But that's to be determined. So we set 175 total, which includes engineering, parking lot pavement restoration, and then some money for the mobile kiosk or whatever the investment is at the end if we have the ability to do that. And then as usual, we projected our operating needs based on the hours that's approved in the summer schedule. Now, we didn't approve our winter schedule, so we did some guesswork on that. But then we added a small contingency for our major component failures like engines, transmissions, and differentials that under our contract, we take that risk so that First Transit doesn't pad their bids to protect against that risk. So we, each year is a little different, but there's usually, unfortunately, 2 or 3 of those failures every year. So there's a little bit of money in the budget for that. And then your attachment shows the budget. I do apologize for the size of the font. I tried to compensate by having some color, but
As you should.
the more readable side is the notes.
Yes, yes.
The explanatory notes are almost readable. The chart itself is a colorful chart. The main highlights I wanted to touch on is each year our revenues are projected to come in, then reality happens, and at the end, maybe they're on projection, maybe they're over, maybe they're under. Only the economic activity of the next year will tell. But with our projections that we got from the county auditor's office, and then our budget that we adopted, which included quite a bit of investment in these capital projects, we still show 165,000 surplus that would go into reserves, but there's a lot of assumptions. But it's good to have a positive number there rather than a negative one. But that assumes everything comes in accurate, which would be almost statistically impossible. So that's it. And then we have a separate CTSA budget, which is the last page in your packet on this item. And the CTSA budget this year, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Does anyone have any questions about our CTA regular budget before we do talk CTSA?
No questions.
Okay.
Thinking about that electric
Okay.
service.
You can
Or they're saying that a 75 amp service is what you need for residents to have an electric vehicle. So just thinking about the 10 vehicles that we're gonna have, 750 amps.
right.
If it was a residential service,
Yep.
times 10, it's gonna be an astronomical amount of electrical service that we're gonna have to install there at the facility. It's gonna be a big deal.
Yeah, I think there's a pad and a big box in our future, very big
Yeah.
electrical box. Hopefully Pacific Power will be good partners on that. That's kind of the wild card. If they can, if they'll help us and if there's some incentives there, that would be great. On the CTSA budget, you may recall CTSA is an optional thing that the county's chosen to do. I think over half of the counties, I think, in the state of California have a functioning CTSA, but some don't. We've been the CTSA for Del Norte County for about 3 years. First year was, about 3 years now, 3-4 years. And this year we're claiming the maximum percent, which is up to 5% of the county's TDA LTF allocation. So this year that amounts to 50,274. Last year we claimed 45,301, and I think that was also the 5% max. One thing to note is that the monies that don't get spent are being returned to the Transportation Commission for future programming. So rather than, it's not one that you can roll over and bank for a later project. So whatever we don't spend, and this year I don't think we're going to spend all of that 45. So there'll be a rescission that'll go back to the commission. This year, though, we do think we'll probably spend the whole 50,000, and here's how it's budgeted. The reason we come in light this last year is, quite frankly, the 2 programs that are approved that we started with, the ADA eligibility and transit travel training, have both been just devastated by the pandemic. Nobody's wanted to be travel trained hardly, because of the risk of COVID spread. And then the ADA applications have been about a quarter of what we normally expected. So we're getting like 1 a month instead of 4 or 5. So the activity, the hours expended on them has been way less. So looking at next year, we anticipate that those 2 programs will probably rebound some, hopefully the pandemic's receding. But then the big thing is we're budgeting 20,000 to co-fund a study with the healthcare district, assuming their budget gets passed. They're going through the same process we are. I believe their final approvals in June because they are meeting next month. But assuming they fund what they said they were we're gonna each put in 20 for a study to analyze whether there's a viable market for some sort of medical shopping shuttle to Southern Oregon from here. All we know right now is it comes up a lot in our unmet needs and in talking with people about what they'd like to see us do, but we don't really have hard numbers. We don't know what the market would be. And we don't want to compete with the Southwest Point necessarily, which is currently the only service that runs between here and Medford. So Southwest Point is one trip a day. You can't really use it. You'd have to do an overnighter over in Grants Pass or Medford right now in order to do any medical or doctor's appointments. So it's got some issues, but so that's some of the stuff that the study will be looking at, as well as who's active in the non-emergency medical transportation theater right now around here, because there are some, we just don't know much about them, and we obviously don't want to compete with them. But at the same time, if there's market that they're not covering, that might be what we want to do. So that's what the study is really about, is to identify if there is a market for the service. If so, what would do it, 1 day, 2 day a week, what days would be the best, how we would market it with maybe the medical industry over in Medford, Grants Pass. So it should be a very interesting study. So that money's included in here, as well as 15,000 for travel training and eligibility support for our operations folks, Fernando and his team, because they have a role in things too. 5,000, assuming for the ADA eligibility if it picks up. If not, that could come in under again. Yeah, so that's the CTSA budget for this year. And again, if we don't spend some of it, it'll just get rescinded at the end of the year so that Tamara and the commission can reprogram it in the future. Any questions?
No questions.
Obviously can't stay quiet in this meeting. I just wanted to explain a little bit more about what happens when transit funds are not used. And as Joe mentioned, they get recycled. They come back to the commission because it's the commission's obligation to allocate these funds, but because we only have one eligible recipient for our transit funds, they really go back through the same formula. They remain TDA or transit funding. They go back through the same formula and then get recycled by the commission for transit purposes. So they don't come to the commission for streets and roads, for transportation planning, for all of the other things that the Transportation Commission does. They remain as transit funds and go through the formula allocation that's established by TDA and go right back to where they came from. What can't happen is that Redwood Coast Transit Authority can't request, say, 50,000 or the 5% maximum of funds, and then only spend 20,000 and continue to build up this fund without spending the money. So that's the reason why it's required by statute for it to go back and then come to you again. It's a little bit tedious, but the money doesn't really leave the transit area. It remains in the transit area and goes through the formula all over again.
Very good. Thank you, Tamara.
Thank you.
And thank you to Tamara for identifying that issue before we went too far along this path. Because I was going to just stockpile reserves, you know me. But
Yeah.
thank you, Tamara.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we pass resolution 2021-22-09. Is that the right one? Yes. Approving the fiscal year 2022-23 Redwood Coast Transit Authority budget.
Second.
Absolutely.
Is there any public comment?
Public comment?
Did you? I missed it. Okay, sorry. Well, that's right. Tamara came up here and gave us.
Oh,
gave
that's-
us public
that
comment.
was the public
Yes,
comment.
Sorry.
All right, no,
My-
that's good.
My mistake.
Chair Altman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Maston,
Yes.
and Director Roberts is absent.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 9. Adopt resolution 2021-22-10, approving submission of fiscal year 2022-23 RCTA TDA claim.
Thank you, Chair Altman. This one's a routine item, but it's a super important one, so it doesn't go unconsigned. But this is our annual claim for the TDA, LTF, and the STA funding that we received through the Transportation Commission, which is, a huge part of what we do. The packet follows the forms required by the state of California. There was one item missing, and that was the amended budget that we just amended. So I'm going to do that and get it in the packet. We have a little time to submit it before the end of June with Tamara, but we're not going to get together again. That's why it had to be on today's agenda. So a couple noteworthy elements of the TDA claim. It's exciting to see the numbers getting bigger every year. So our TDA LTF is up to 955,212, which was a jump up from 867.22, which was fantastic the year before. So that's a further increase of 11% projected for next year, which is phenomenal. The STA side was actually one of the funds that did take a little bit of an actual hit from the pandemic, as we all expected, because it was STAs derived from a percentage of sales tax on diesel, and for a while there, people were driving less. So that did actually cause a drop in the fund a couple of years ago. But it's projected up to, I believe this is an all-time high for us, 265,609. And this does not include the state of good repair, which is a sub-silo of STA. This is just the STA that we can use for either capital or operations, and we almost always use it for operations. That's a jump from of over 67,000 from last year, where we were at 198,330. And that's an increase of 33%, which is phenomenal. So with that, I'll take questions. I don't need to go through the whole claim. Inside the claim, there's copies of our operating contract, our latest CHP terminal inspection, which again, kudos to Fernando and Nick. We were without issues again. The guys are doing a super job in the shop. But any questions about the claim?
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Public comment?
I'll give it a try. Chair Altman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Maston,
Yes.
and Director Roberts is absent.
Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to item 10, approved purchase.
We're skipping.
Oh, I'm
pulled 10.
sorry, we pulled item 10.
Yeah, I apologize for item 10. We were trying to get it to you guys. It's the package of technologies. It's going to give us the onboard Wi-Fi and the credit card readers. Luckily, I think they're all under the procurement threshold, so I can just proceed with the project if the board directs. But yeah, I was going to bring the POs to you guys today, but there's too many moving parts and we weren't quite ready.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the help, Vice Chair Short. Moving on to item 11, approved purchase orders with Sim Seats Incorporated and Brasco International for bus stop amenities.
All right, this is an exciting one. This one also had a last minute kind of change. We are not bringing the Brasco purchase order to you guys today. In an internal meeting, we had quite a discussion about what to do with it, and we decided to punt and wait on the schedule. The Brasco is going to be schedule holders that hold information and mount to the post. So we have some questions to iron out on that. My internal staff rose up against me and stopped that. So we pulled that off, but the Simi Seats order is ready to go. So let me get caught up here with that. Here we go. Sorry about that. So the semi seats, well, first of all, like for Director Maston and some of the folks that haven't been on the board very long, RCTA has been prioritizing bus stop improvements and trying to play catch up with this for a number of years. It's been a challenge to us, both funding, and staff time. It's particularly challenging kind of with our remote model, with me not in town every day. Often when I am here, I'm spending time out in the field at bus stops because that's what needs, it needs to be done. These type of projects often require multiple visits and measuring and laying out sites and stuff. And it's just, they're labor intensive, at least on the front end. So we have been addressing bus stops mainly with shelters the last few years. We set aside, once the state of good repair subset of the STA fund was created with the passage of SB1 back in like 2017, we set aside the SGR funding for bus stop improvements from the very start. That fund started a little slow, but ends up it's been about 30 to 40,000 a year, each year since about 2018 when it got rolling. We've used that fund. This is one that can roll over and accumulate. So our balance on that coming into this meeting today is about 114,000. So you can do the math. We've got about almost 3 years worth accumulated, although we've been spending also as we go. We've put out, we added shelters initially, then we went through and replaced a lot of the older ones that were falling apart and becoming an eyesore. So shelters, they run about 10,000 a piece. So we've put out quite a few of those. And then looking at this year, we were considering more shelters, but right now there's not many locations that are ready for a shelter that don't need some additional civil work, some concrete work, larger pads, all of which are, slow things down and increase costs. And then we're also having such trouble with maintenance of our existing shelters that, I don't want to beat on that point too much, but it makes me reluctant to order more shelters when, one, we're having trouble finding locations to install them at, and two, they're getting vandalized as fast as we can put them out there. So we were looking at some other options, and I found the semi seat. I didn't know what they were called. I didn't know who made them, but I had seen them in areas north of here. They have them in Grants Pass and Medford. And I'd seen them in Sonoma County where I used to work before I come up here. So I didn't know who they were getting them, but I thought they were very convenient because they can be mounted on the bus stop pole or just, near it. And they provide seating, but you can't really sleep and set up shop. There's no cover. So if it's raining, they're not the greatest, but it's seating, and you can put them and they fit nicely into residential areas that would never want a shelter. So what we're recommending we do, considering all the things going on in the world and right now, is investing in some semi seats this year and get them out into the public. And these will be mostly at stops that would never get shelters anyway, like in residential areas with inadequate sidewalks that would require a major investment to upgrade those. So we have 50 locations identified. Made a couple adjustments yesterday when I was out in the field. I want to say that I think 18 are in the city and maybe 32 in the county, or 19 and 31, something like that. And so each will be colored according to where they're going to be installed. So the green will go in the county and the blue in the city. And these fit in even in sidewalks that are not real robust because they only take up about a foot. And I went and checked some of some of the areas with the weaker sidewalks will still be able to receive the semi and maintain ADA clearance, which is critical. So within the order, some of them come with poles. You can order them with poles, and they don't require any excavation. We just drill down 4 anchor bolts and plop them into the concrete. So I believe there's a total of.
So where are we ordering the ones with poles? I see the divider seats. I looked them up, and if they're going to be out there kind of sitting out on their own, what are we going to have the poles for?
The poles they'll be mounted into the anchor plate. So they'll be in the sidewalk too, although they don't actually they don't get drilled into the concrete. They're into the
Okay.
plate that holds them in. So those locations, and I was trying to get the number of them, 21. So those are right now like poles in the back of the sidewalk that are just in the dirt. They're often leaning because they're not affixed into the concrete. So they tend to sag and get pushed over. So any of those within that 21, there's 2 or 3 that didn't have any signs. And then the other like 18 or so are signs that are on a post that are in the dirt behind the sidewalk. And we'll just remove those because they tend to lean and they don't look good. And they're behind the sidewalk. So that's where the
So we're
21
gonna,
posts.
we're gonna use the pole between the seats to put our signs up.
Yeah, the 21 posts, so the ones that get the new posts will get our new sign mounted in them. And then the other ones that have a good sign already, will just get the semi seat and mount it at the back of the sidewalk.
Beautiful.
So that's
Thank you.
kind of the combination there.
We don't have any pictures of those seats.
Yeah, I should have put that in here.
I
Yeah,
looked them up. Basically, it's just a little place to just sit that's off of one side of the pole or the other side of the pole. If it
yeah,
doesn't have a center pole, then it's got just a little hoop divider, just a little piece of metal just to separate you and the person sitting next to you. It's way too small for somebody to camp on if, you know, so you're not gonna get a transient sleeping on them. Basically, it's just a place for you to sit down and probably nothing else. So, yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah.
yeah. If you go to SIMMESEAT.com, they got some pictures of the products and we're ordering a mix of them, but yeah. Darren described them quite well. Sorry about the lack of pictures. That's what I
Sorry to
forgot.
I think it's a great idea for those places where we don't have stops. And yeah, I see people just kind of loitering. You know, you think they're loitering, but they're waiting for a bus. It'd be good to have those there.
And a few of the locations you'll see probably can eventually get shelters when the time is right, but many of these locations, this will probably be the only seating they ever have because they're, in a neighborhood next to houses and stuff.
Okay.
The story is kind of interesting behind them. When I found these guys, they're made in Eugene, and they were invented by a bus driver for lane transit that just saw this need. It's like, how could we get seating at stops that just don't deserve shelters, not appropriate for shelters? And they came up with this design and made a business out of it. It's kind of neat.
Good for them.
Well, I like Director Short said, I really like the idea of still for the, the older folks and people that need to sit down, they have a seat, but it does keep the transients off of them with the dividers. Or, I'm looking at one with the pole now,
Yep.
but yeah.
Yeah, if you, the pole model naturally divides it, and then if you don't do that one, that's where you get the divider ring. thing.
Yeah.
So some of the stops where you see people just standing by the sign, those can't have seats installed.
No, that's where a lot of these are gonna go, just where there's a pole now, but there's not room for a shelter. It's not like next to a store or something.
Mm.
So a lot of these are up and down your residential neighborhoods where people are just standing by the pole with nowhere to sit.
Yeah.
And the neighbors would be concerned if we wanted to build a shelter in front of their house. But this kind of thing, it's not so intrusive or anything.
Any idea how we are on the transients that are in the sheltered ones now? Any idea how that's going?
We can see if Fernando's listening, if he wants to give us an update over the Zoom, but it's an ongoing battle. It's an ongoing issue.
Probably getting worse too, I imagine.
I can't speak to worse, but it wasn't good before. No.
If you wanted to speak, I can speak on that matter.
Please do.
So lately, it's actually been pretty calm. Deputies have been going out there more periodically, taking people and having them, escorting them out. So it's been nice. I believe they got more staff, so it helps that they have more staff to be able to go out and cover the shelters for us whenever we give them a call. So
That's good news. That's good news. Good to hear, Fernando.
Thank you, Fernando.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well,
Thank you to our local police department that is working on that.
They're doing a fantastic job.
Yep, no, they've been a huge help, helping us try to move people along and keep the shelters open for riders. But yeah, it's an ongoing issue.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve purchase order 2021-22-24 to Sim Seats LLC for bus stop seating.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any public comment?
We're getting good at this.
No public comment?
Thank
General
you,
Manager
Tamara, for
Ryan,
being here.
pull the vote for us, please.
Gladly, Chair Altman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Director Smith.
Yes.
Director Maston,
Yes.
and Director Roberts is absent.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Hopefully Fernando's still with us because he's up.
I'm still here.
Item 12, operations report, First Transit.
Operations report. So far, we've gotten 2 drivers out on the road with training. We have a total of 2 more that we're working with on weekends to get them certified. By June 15th is our plan to have them out on the road is when they could start. Currently with DMV's challenge that we have, we actually contacted one of our locations out in Oakland. The benefits of having multiple sites with First Transit is that we have the ability to have a third-party tester do the drive test for us. So we flew them through Contour to Oakland. Oakland location, drove to the airport, picked them up. They performed their drive test, got licensed, and waited for Contour to fly back. So same day. And we didn't have to wait a month and a half just to get a driver trained with the DMV. Because our local DMV here, as you know, does not do commercial licenses. And we have to drive to Eureka if they have the available schedule. So that's where we're at there. We plan to start the summer off really well. Like Joe said, our only concern was that if the routes do get cut, will we have enough hours for the drivers that stay on with us? So, but we won't know that until the time comes. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, did you have a question?
I did. So about the DMV, I know you have to go to Eureka for your commercial to test. Did they change, I heard something about the laws changed this year about getting your commercial driver's license. You have to go through a school of some sort.
That is correct. You have to obtain a DL 1236 form. And basically it's from a certified trainer stating that you've received the proper training to receive your CDL. which
Okay,
has been
thank you.
Another challenge.
So, and where are we at as far as, are you a trainer?
Yeah, so myself and Aline are certified trainers with TSI. So we qualify for that. And we just signed up with the license. We just have to send in notification to the Department of Motor Vehicle. And they give us a website where we have to go in after every trainee that we train, put that personnel into the computer, and then wait 3 days before they authorize them to do the drive test. That's the challenge with the DL 1236.
So one more, sorry, Fernando, you're a trooper, man. One more question.
Yep.
Is it just for passenger vehicles? Or
No,
is it just
no,
as
I
a
was told
commercial?
it was for all commercial vehicles.
For all commercial vehicles, you are a certified trainer, correct?
Correct.
That's awesome. Thank you. And
You're welcome.
there
And
can-
that's a standard just for passenger with the, not commercial, but commercial B licenses. Aline and I are certified for. Now you have to
commercial,
go through, yeah, commercial. You have to go through another one if you want to get like your class A with triples, doubles, and so
Okay.
forth.
correct, but you can do air brakes and things like
Yes.
that too.
That is
Okay.
correct.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Fernando.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from the board? Okay, any public comment on agenda item 12? Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll move on to agenda item 13, general manager's report.
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to think what we might have not covered. It's been a very thorough meeting and I really appreciate everyone's patience with the packets and stuff. So we'll be talking about the item that got pulled 10. If we need to come back, if there's anything that's like above my procurement threshold, we'll bring it back in July, which will be our next meeting. We're planning not to meet in June because we've covered everything we need to get the agency set up for next fiscal year. So hopefully we don't have to do that. The project itself, we're still hoping to launch this summer. We need to get routers on the bus with SIM cards so they have cellular data, and then those routers will power the validators. We're going to need to replace our tablets. That wasn't even mentioned on this agenda item, but our current tablet computers are about 4 years old. So that's a long time in computer years. So we'll need to probably replace those. And then that'll provide the data for our new Swiftly system, which I did want to mention for the last 2 months or so, Fernando's and I, and then Fernando's team, the last couple of weeks have been training and integrating the Swiftly product. So now if you go to our website, you'll see, if you go to the front page of the Redwood Coast Transit website, for example, an interactive map will pop up and you'll actually see the buses, some buses on there moving around. That's their real location. So you're basically looking into our dispatch switchboard at that point. And then if you click on each individual route map, you get a little more detail on the bus. And we've started using it in dispatch in the yard, and people are pretty excited about it. Some of the preliminary data actually was used to fine tune a couple of time points in the draft summer schedule that's basically just got approved and will go to the printer this week. So we're excited about the Swiftly product. It's definitely an upgrade over our first AVL CAD, which is Double Map, which is being retired this year and replaced by Swiftly. So we're excited about that. Like all tech projects, it's way more work than you think and usually more money. And that has not been an exception with this one, but I think it'll be all worth it. I mean, it really helps. I've overheard, I was so happy to overhear dispatch using it on a couple of phone calls that come in this afternoon when I was at the shop. So it's good. It's a great step for us. Probably by the time we get back together, we'll be ready to roll with that credit card. We call it the contactless fare project. I know Humboldt Transit's about where we are. They haven't ordered their equipment, but they're almost ready to. And then it's probably about a month to 2 to get everything installed and tested. So probably by the time we get together midsummer, we'll be getting ready to go live on that. I wish we would have made it for the start of the summer. That's a bit disappointing, but such as it is, these projects, there's always more to them than you think, especially on the tech side. So just to remind the board, the thought is on that is we're going to do like a 6-month promo period with very cheap fares. So to get people to try it, people that have credit cards or debit cards to try the service. And then after that, it's going to be a distance-based fare system, very similar to what we already have in place. We started doing that about 5 years ago. So it's luckily our fares are not going to change much. But there will be a promo fare. They're talking about $1, which will be really exciting and easy to convey. So $1 to Arcata, I mean, you can't beat that, especially with gas prices the way they are. Even right now, when we're telling people what the fares are, like $8 to Arcata when a gallon of gas is like $7. It's like, okay, that's a pretty good deal. So hopefully these things will work together to help us start to rebuild our lost ridership. I think that's mostly it. I know I'll think of something on the drive home tonight that I forgot to talk to you guys about, but I think that's it. We're set to tentatively meet again Monday, July 25th. If anything changes, we could meet quicker, but I think we're covered until then. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? Moser? Any public comment? Okay, item 14 is announcements. Any board members have any announcements?
this. I'm excited about the city, what you got going with the city. I know we're in the planning phase of that, but with what's going on with Front Street and them moving forward with that, I'm really excited I can't wait to report out on that.
Yeah.
We'll actually have something to report out on at a council meeting on that. That'll be really cool.
Yep, that will be. We're, I don't know when we're meeting, but soon we'll be having a Zoom with your planning guys, Bob, I want to think, Bob's his first name, and John and Eric and stuff. So, yeah, we're just trying to figure out what process they want us to go through to kind of get that idea out to the community about a transit center there. But yeah, it's exciting times. It's a good site. I like it more each time I go by there, actually.
That's all I had. Sorry.
That's all you got?
I look at it every time I go by. Going, can't wait to see.
It's a good spot. And
Yeah.
it's actually pretty close to those restrooms across the street. Closer than it looked on the aerial photo.
Thank you. Is it appropriate to ask for public comment on announcements or any public comment on announcements?
Not necessary.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here tonight. With that, I adjourn to the next RCTA board meeting. Will be on Monday, July 25th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m.
So, you got the
Have a good day, guys.
Right.
Building the gap.